Well, hello everyone. Welcome to A New Way this evening. I'm really happy to stand here today. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to say that at A New Way, we will always stand for marginalized communities of every type, whether it is undocumented immigrants, whether it is the LGBTQ community, and what we're here to talk tonight specifically about is the trans community. So with that being said, I want to introduce our speaker tonight. It's Danny Peel. Danny's a proud queer transgender woman who, by her own admission, spent way too much of her life in the closet. And contrary to what Donald Trump and the Republican Party may say, truly does exist. So with all that, welcome Danny.
It's nice to be here. Tonight I want to talk about the fourth letter in the LGBTQ. T stands for transgender, which is not only misunderstood, but certainly recently the most controversial member of the letters that represent queer people. The Oxford Dictionary defines transgender as an adjective, denoting or relating to a person whose gender identity does not correspond with the sex registered for them. Transgender is an umbrella term for persons whose gender identity, gender expression, or behavior does not conform to the typically associated with the sex to which they were assigned. Some transgender people might be also called transsexual, non-binary, genderqueer, gender non-conforming, or two-spirit. Some intersex people might also identify as transgender, although some also do not. According to Pew Research, 1.6% of the U.S. population identify as transgender. In that same study, 90% of U.S. adults know someone that is either lesbian, gay, or bisexual. Less than 30% of adults know someone that identifies as transgender. Historically, transgender people have always been around. In almost every culture, we have existed, usually visibly and accepted. The Hijra, a third gender in South Asian society, is culturally, spiritually, and historically significant. Hijras are legally recognized in Pakistan and Bangladesh. Two-spirit, a pan-indigenous term for people who have a gender identity that is different from societal and ceremonial gender identity. Warrior, a traditional third gender role in modern Indonesia. Fakafafin, a community in Nayanian culture that may take a traditionally feminine role in expression. X-gender, a transgender identity in Japan. It is not female or male, similar to genderqueer or non-binary. Papathoi, a term in Thailand for a transgender woman or a feminine gay male. Fine, a term in Samoa for a gender identity that is sometimes considered to be a third gender. Ma'u, a term in Hawaii for a gender identity. Waira, a term in Tahiti for a gender identity. Wakawahi, a term in New Zealand for a gender identity. We are everywhere and have always been everywhere. So what is so controversial about transgender people? Athletics seems to be one of the number one issues. We have heard about this huge problem. Women being forced to compete with men. Women can't get on sports teams because men have taken their place. It is such a huge problem. It is so unfair. And you know who is to blame? It's those damn liberal Democrats and their woke policies. They are destroying our country. I tell you, They let all those men pretending to be women ruin women's sports. Damn Democrats, damn transgenders. But wait, maybe we should do a little fact check. When NCAA President Charlie Baker testified before Congress last month, he stated there were currently 544,000 athletes competing on 19,000 NCAA teams on various levels across the country last year. And there were less than 10 athletes that were transgender. Yeah, it's a real big one. Bathroom controversy. Likewise, it's a controversy. Well, it kind of depends on who you ask. According to Pew Research, 45% of men say it's only okay by your gender identity, but 52% of men say no, it's only by your birth sex. But yet, asking the same question to women, 55% of the women say it's okay by your gender identity, and only 40% of them say it's only okay by your birth sex. Same question. If you're 18 to 29, 67% of men and women say it's okay by your gender identity. 32% of men and women say it's only okay by your birth sex. Same question if you're 30 to 49. Start to get conservative, I guess. There's 49% say gender identity, and 49% say birth sex. Same question, 50 to 64. Now you start to get really concerned. 44% say gender identity, 52% say by birth sex. But here's what kind of surprised me. The same question, if you're 65 or older, 48% said gender, and only 45% said by birth sex. Now, how about people that go to church? If you go to church weekly or more, I don't mean weekly or more, but I mean weekly and more than weekly, 34% say it's okay by gender identity, and 60% say only by birth sex. But if you go to church less than weekly, 57% say it's okay by gender identity, and 40% say it's okay by birth sex. And if you go to church less than weekly and you're unaffiliated with any particular church, 70% say it's okay by gender identity, and 28% say only by birth sex. Well, this is my opinion. But the groups that are in favor of people going to the bathroom by gender identity are overwhelmingly the same people who don't watch Fox News regularly and don't hear about how God made only man and woman from the pulpit every Sunday. By law, it all depends on where you are. There are no national laws yet. State by state, it changes. Illinois, by law, you can use the bathroom for your gender identity. There are several states where you can use bathrooms in public buildings depending on your sex identified at birth only. And unfortunately, most airports in those states are public buildings. In my case, my driver's license shows my sex is female. If I was challenged, it's not clear how that would be determined. My DNA says one thing, my identification and my body says something else. I don't know how they're going to figure it out. Similar to athletics, this has been a political hot potato. The red state legislatures have made this a political issue. They want to protect the women from being assaulted by the transgenders. They care so very much about women. And do you know why all the women's bathrooms are being invaded by men pretending to be women? It's those damn woke Democrats. They don't care about women like we do. They think it's fine for men pretending to be women so that they can leer at women and rape them. Maybe our president might have a couple of questionable morals, but for the most part, we are the saviors and protectors of women. So vote for us, and we will keep you ladies safe from those transgenders that keep saying that they remain. The third area of controversy has to do with trans care, and that is the case that's being decided by the Supreme Court later on this year. And to be perfectly frank, I am not optimistic about the outcome. On one side, we have every major medical group testifying that transgender health care makes sense, saves lives, and has been proven to meet best practice. On the other side, we have a bunch of conservative zealots funded by right-wing extremists attempting to score additional political points by spreading lies and misconceptions. They once again try to portray themselves as heroes while they destroy lives. The true issue is society is changing and they don't like it. They are not happy about the fact that more than 20% of Generation Z identify as LGBTQ+. They want to return to their good old days. At the Conservative Political Action Conference in 2023, Speaker Michael Knowles called for the total eradication of transgenderism. For the good of society, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology at every level. From a recorded conversation between minor transgender healthcare hearings in Michigan and Ohio legislatures. My whole thing is in terms of the end game. Why are we allowing these practices for anyone? Why would we stop this for anyone under 18 but apply it to anyone over 18? It's harmful across the board, and I think that's something we need to take into consideration in terms of the end game. Representative Schreiber, that's very, very smart thought there. And I think sometimes we know legislatively, sometimes we have to take small bites. So how did this end-game strategy play out last year? In 2024, there were 672 anti-trans bills introduced throughout the country. 613 of these bills failed to become law, but 50 of them did pass, and they all generated publicity about the transgender issue. 2024 was the 5th consecutive year, record-breaking year for anti-trans legislation. And then we had last year's election. Keep in mind that according to the Gallup poll, only 18% of registered voters thought that transgender issues were the most important issue. The Republican Party spent $215 million vilifying transgender people on network TV ads, according to data released by Ad Impact and cited by the Washington Post. As Montana State Representative Zoe Zuppart was quoted, attacking our community was without a doubt their number one ad priority. As Alejandra Carabella, clinical instructor at Harvard Law Cyber Law Clinic, pointed out, that's $134 per trans person in anti-trans ad spend. and say that this assault on our community has been disproportionate is an understatement. So what is exactly the motivation of the Republicans? Why has this been their one go-to strategy? Do they really care that much more about women's sports, bathrooms, and transgender healthcare than everybody else? Or do they find a very small minority group that can't defend themselves against their constant assault? And in the process, they suckered the Democrats into defending them against this endless onslaught so that they could also become victims. Anyway, that's my take. So what are trans rights? Up until very recently, they didn't exist. There were no federal trans rights and no states' trans rights as well. When I was in junior high, I personally observed what could happen to someone that might have been gender fluid. The principal of my junior high was arrested in a raid on the Fun Lounge on Manheim Road in Melrose Park on April 27, 1964. He was one of 103 men in a vice, and I don't really know if he identified as a man or not. The arresting officer was quoted in the Chicago Tribune article describing the raid, saying, "Many of the men carried powder puffs and lipsticks, and some wore wigs. That lounge has catered to sex deviants from all over the nation." I saw my principal of school on Friday. He was arrested on Saturday, and I never saw him again. That was my first experience with trans rights, and I spent quite a few decades in the closet as a result. There were other queer people who were a lot braver than I was. A few years later, in a different bar in New York called the Stonewall, some drag queens and genderqueer patrons had enough of vice raids, cops, payoffs, and corruption, and started a rebellion that eventually led to the gay rights movement. Everyone in the LGBTQ plus community owes a lot of gratitude to those brave souls that literally risked their lives to change the world. As someone that grew up in the 60s, to see how far we have come, it is amazing. And social acceptance has led to change. Gay marriage became the law of the land. And it seemed like the Equality Act, which has had popular support, would follow. And then things started going backwards. But it was never any additional rights. In some cases, it came close to being equal rights. The one thing that actually changed for the most part was that we stopped getting arrested for existing, for gathering, for living, for getting dressed, for walking down the street, for eating, and like in my principal's case, for going out with friends and having a drink. But we have never been safe. Depending on where you are and what the color of your skin might be, being part of the transgender community is an open invitation to insult, ridicule, assault, violence, and murder. There are some states where there are laws now to protect you. Illinois is definitely one of them. We have the Illinois Human Rights Act, which protects us from discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodation, credit. The Illinois Department of Human Rights additionally protects students. The Illinois Department of Education requires schools to offer instruction in gender identification and sexual orientation. The legislature has passed and the governor has signed new rules making it easier to change your gender marker on IDs and birth certificates. Bathroom access is by gender identity. Yet even in our state, a few years ago, I made an appointment to have a gender-affirming surgery done at a well-known local Catholic hospital. I had a frank and honest conversation with the doctor there, and she agreed to perform my surgery, and we agreed on a date. I set up an appointment with my primary care doctor for a pre-surgical appointment. My doctor ordered the necessary lab work, and I had these tests scheduled and done. I arranged time off at work for the surgery and for the recovery at home afterwards. I got approval from my insurance company to pay for the surgery. And then 4 days before the surgery, I received a call from the surgeon telling me that she had been ordered to cancel the surgery. She had appealed that decision and had been turned down. The reason why it was canceled was because she had coded the surgery for gender affirmation. The Catholic hospital wouldn't do the surgery because it was for gender affirmation. You would think in Illinois, with all the laws to protect you, that they couldn't discriminate like that. But Illinois also has some of the strongest right of conscience laws. One wipes out the other. Religious-based healthcare can and does discriminate. Please be aware. I didn't know. I do not. So now we get to federal law. There was one significant ruling by the Supreme Court. In 2020, in a landmark case, they ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination in employment for transgender people. I don't know if anybody's heard about this case, but it was a funeral director decided to transition. She told her boss that she was going to transition. The boss fired her. She sued for employment discrimination. The first court case was ruled that it was legal for him to fire her. She appealed that decision. She won that decision. That case was appealed and went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld the appeals court. That decision was authored by Neil Gorsuch, which is very surprising, and they upheld the appeals court decision that was sex discrimination. That is the one and only law that really exists that applies to transgender people. Other than that, there's been a lot of rules and regulations that have been put in place and or removed by whoever is present. Your very right to exist can be erased by the snap of your finger. And whoever is currently in charge of the Oval Office, and that is exactly what Donald Trump promised to do and did. If you look at the copies of his executive order defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government, transgender people are no more. They are just men that think they are women, or women that think they are men. They are all deluded, so says Donald Trump. In the first section of his executive order, he not only erases every transgender person's identity, but also eliminates over 3 million intersex people who don't fit his definition of male or female. With a single stroke of his pen, He refutes all the major medical associations and eliminates the legitimacy of a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. He directs Homeland Security to invalidate all passports, visas, and global entry cards that reflect gender differently than sex determined at birth. All federal prisoners will be moved to prisons that correspond to their sex identified at birth. No federal prisoners will be allowed hormone treatment, leaving any prisoner who may have already had sex surgery no hormones at all. He has ordered all department heads to implement plans of action in all federal facilities to facilitate single-sex spaces and to remove all mention of gender definitions. It's only men and women. No mention of transgender, no mention, as of today, homosexuality, gay, it's all gone. And so it all begins just as promised. So what is the future of trans rights? Well, I can't sugarcoat this. Certainly in the next few years, it is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So what can we do about it? Fight back in every way we can. Open your mouth. Educate your friends and neighbors. I will not take this lying down. Remember Stonewall and support each other. There are a lot of scared people. They need you. They need you to listen. Let me just close this by sharing this story. Piglet said, "Who?" "Yes," said Piglet. "I'm scared," said Piglet. For a moment there was silence. "Would you like to talk about it?" asked Piglet, when Pooh didn't appear to be saying anything further. "I'm just so scared," blurted out Piglet. "So anxious, because I don't feel like things are getting any better. If anything, I feel like things might be getting worse. People are angry because they're so scared. They're turning on one another, and there seems to be no clear plan out of it. And I worry about my friends, the people I love, and I wish so much that I could give them all a hug. You know, Piglet, I am so scared, and I cannot tell you how much I wish it wasn't so." Piglet was thoughtful. He looked out at the blue of the skies, peeping between the branches of the trees in the 100-acre wood, and listened to its bird. "I'm here," he said, simply. "I hear you, Pooh. And I'm here." For a moment, Pooh was perplexed. "But aren't you going to tell me not to be silly? That I should stop getting myself into a state and pull myself together? That it's hard for everyone right now?" "No," said Piglet quite decisively. "No, I am very much not going to do do those things. But, said Pooh, I can't change the world right now and continue to do it. I'm not going to patronize you with platitudes. Oh, everything will be okay. Because I don't know that. What I can do, though, Pooh, is that I can make sure that you know that I am here. And that I will always be here to listen and to support you. And for you to know that you are heard. I can't make those anxious feelings go away. Not really. But I can promise you that all the time I have breath left in my body, you won't ever need to feel those anxious feelings alone. And it's a strange thing, because even as Piglet said that, who could feel some of those anxious feelings start to loosen their grip? Could feel one or two of them start to slither away into the forest. Found by his friend who sat there stonily next to him, who thought he had never been more grateful than to him.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you for everyone coming here tonight. We are here every Friday night anyway. Although next week we will not be here because we're having a games night at the Clark's house, and so if you need that information, please let us know. Otherwise, we will be here every Friday night at Community United Methodist Church. Some things that we've got coming up: we've got maybe a program on Black History. That's later on. That's later on that one. Oh, that's right. The 7th, we have a prayer topic coming up. And then we have our next yep. On the 14th, we start a brand new book in our book study, The Widening of God's Mercy. And so we'll be doing that on the second Friday of every month. Then we have our Black History, and the 28th, remind me again. I don't know. We can't figure. I don't have my list in front of me. Jason's not here tonight, and he usually gives us all of that. But please come and join us at any time. Again, thank you for Danny. And if I could just say something that came to me while you were speaking, Danny. There's a famous quote by Martin Luther, and I'm going to reframe that quote in today's thing. First, they came to the transgender people, but I wasn't transgender, so I did nothing. Then they came to the non-binary people, and I wasn't non-binary, so they did nothing. Then they came to the gays and the lesbians, but I wasn't their lesbian, so I did nothing. And then they came to me, but there was no one. So remember that as you go forward and see how we can, no matter how you identify, to be an advocate for any marginalized communities, especially in our friends. Thank you.